Carson Beck foregoing the NFL draft and coming back to college, but not to Georgia. Locked On SEC starts right now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And what's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. On today's show, we'll discuss the latest news on Carson Beck entering the transfer portal. We'll also get to other news as Texas, the SEC's lone chance for a national championship. They will play Ohio State tonight in Dallas. Also get you caught up on the latest transfer portal news and much, much more. All right, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs are better with FanDuel. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets. Guaranteed win or lose. Visit FanDuel.com today to get started. I'm Chris Gordy. Thanks for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Shout out to Everydayers who are free and available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. All right, let's get to the big news. Came out yesterday is Carson Beck, news that he is going to enter the transfer portal. Very interesting news because we all thought that, Carson Beck was going off to the NFL draft. In fact, he officially declared for the NFL draft just a couple of weeks ago. And so the news was made, after leaving Athens after 5 seasons. It was like, all right, well, he's off. And, we know Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward and Jalen Milroe are among the top ranked quarterbacks in this draft. But a lot of people figured, well, Beck will be kind of the next in line after that group. Well, apparently some suitors probably making it known to Beck's representation that, hey, we would pay significant money to have you stay in college another year. And also, maybe he started to get some return from some NFL draft scouts, maybe saying, maybe you're not as high as we thought, and especially coming off of this injury. Just very, very interesting. So reports surfaced Thursday that rather than heading to the NFL draft, Beck would enter the transfer portal, and immediately he was linked to Miami by ESPN's Pete Thamel. On threes, Pete Nakos followed up with a report that Ohio State and Texas Tech were among the teams to watch for Beck's potential recruitment. Whoever lands Thamel or quarterback will be spending upwards of $2 million to do so. Pete Thamel was on the Pat McAfee show on Thursday, and he said as much. He said, look, I would think that Carson Beck, over $2 million, just my general estimate, would be about the market for him. And it's just exponentially bigger than it was a year ago. Beck finished the season with almost 3,500 passing yards, 28 touchdowns, 12 picks, completed close to 65% of his passes. Went 24-3 as a starter with Georgia, led them to an Orange Bowl beatdown of Florida State last season, an SEC championship game appearance this season, where they won, but of course he left at halftime, was knocked out of the game, and his injury was revealed to be a UCL injury in his throwing arm. He did have successful surgery on that elbow last month, and he is expected to begin throwing again this spring. And, there was some thought that, okay, maybe this injury is going to impact his ability to work out for NFL clubs. And, maybe this thing might work out better. Just you go back to college for one more year. And we've already seen the market kind of start to dry up, as far as quarterback demand. We saw John Mateer goes from Washington State to Oklahoma. Miller Moss goes from USC to Louisville. I mean, we've seen this, a lot of different guys already changing environments. But interesting report from CBS. They said, while Beck's decision wasn't entirely a surprise, as he had yet to sign with a representative with an NFL agent, leaving the door open to return to college and doing that, the timing and manner in which it unfolded caught Georgia off guard. Again, this is from CBS. The nature in which Beck's departure played out contributes to further sourness in the breakup with Georgia. Sources say Georgia at large had already been miffed with Beck being away from the team during much of the college football playoff prep for the Sugar Bowl, as he sought opinions from doctors in both California and Texas. Beck was on the sideline for the Sugar Bowl, where their season ended, of course. Gunnar Stockton got to start, but Beck arrived in New Orleans a day later than his teammates, and he skipped the team's media day. And some within the program that week seemed ready to move on from Beck. Of course, his personality has been out there on the grabbing headlines with his Miami basketball star and TikTok sensation, girlfriend Hannah Cavender. And some people have talked about, has that been a distraction for him, and so on and so forth. But on the morning of the team's first full day in New Orleans, Beck called Gunnar Stockton to voice his support and provide guidance heading into the playoff game. And then he arrived in New Orleans a day later. Beck's move to the portal allows him to explore all his options here. And one NFL director of college scouting told CBS, great decision by Beck. He should help himself. Now, again, before his UCL injury, he was not expected to factor into round 1 of the NFL draft. One scout believed he would be a day 3 pick. So, like rounds 4 through 7. Sources did indicate to CBS Beck could command as much as $3 million in revenue share agreements, a figure that rivaling a second-round NFL rookie salary. He would also be expected to earn more from collectives and marketing deals. Beck did enter the transfer portal with a do not contact tag. That's a designation that sometimes signals a player has already made up his mind in the transfer market. And like we said, Miami is the name that keeps popping up. His girlfriend, Hannah, of course, played basketball at Miami. And like I said, they will begin as the front runner for his services. Hurricanes have a need for an experienced quarterback. Of course, Cam Ward is heading off to the NFL draft. And the guy who's supposed to be their heir apparent, was it Emory Williams? Kind of underwhelmed in the second half of that Pop-Tart game. 5 of 14 for just 26 yards with an interception. Ward enrolled at Miami last year after receiving feedback from the NFL that, you're probably not going to be a first-round pick. He goes to Coral Gables for a year, and look, now he's projected as a first-round pick. So, look, is Beck going to explore his options? Sure. He's got 2 other schools, like we said, that popped up. Contact was made by Texas Tech officials. Should be just really, like, can you imagine Carson Beck goes from Georgia to Texas Tech? But from CBS, they say sources in Lubbock have largely shut down that idea at this point. The other school in the mix here to keep an eye on is Ohio State. The Buckeyes have been steadfast behind the scenes that underclassman Julian Sayin is likely to take over the reins. Remember, former Alabama enrollee. But established veteran would make some sense, right? To bring in Carson Beck on a 1-year rental to Ohio State. And like we said, his recovery, his family talked to a number of doctors, and it sounds like, he should start throwing sometime this spring. But Georgia, on the other hand, obviously they were already planning for life after Carson Beck. Gunnar Stockton, they kind of almost basically committed to as the quarterback of the future. Came in the second half of the SEC championship game and then started the playoff game, and the future looks bright with Gunnar Stockton. It is possible Georgia will add another veteran to the room, especially with Jaden Rashada entering the transfer portal. So you got the 4-star prospect Ryan Puglisi. You've got Ryan Montgomery coming in. But just very, very interesting story. I think we all thought that Carson Beck was heading off to the NFL draft, and that was it. But like I said, Miami appears to be the favorite to land his services. So we'll see what happens. Again, Ohio State would make a lot of sense as well. The other one to keep an eye on here is Quinn Ewers as well, who we're going to see tonight in the Cotton Bowl playoff game. But Quinn Ewers' name has been the one that's kind of popped up as, there's some offers out there. There's been rumblings that Notre Dame very well could, move on from Riley Leonard, and they got a spot in the national championship game. That Quinn Ewers could go slide in there and go be the starter for Notre Dame next year. I've also heard Oregon could be in the mix as well. So certainly a story to keep an eye on. The Quinn Ewers number that was thrown out there from On 3 was that, he reportedly has a $6 million offer on the table to leave Texas and skip the NFL draft. So fascinating stories. 2 really good quarterbacks in the SEC who, like we said, probably a few months ago, we all expected both those guys would be off to the NFL draft. And now here we are, where it sounds like both Carson Beck and Quinn Ewers will both be playing in college football again next year, but not in the SEC, not at Texas and Ohio State. Although there is some, should say, there are some Texas people who have turned out there that there's a world where Quinn Ewers comes back next year again at Texas. Like let's say he wins the national championship. Do they maybe recommit to him and say, you're our guy? Hey, Arch Manning, got to wait. But then you really risk Arch Manning hitting the portal. And there's a lot of folks who think Arch is Arch is the more talented quarterback of the two. So anyway, we will get into some more talk on the Cotton Bowl here coming up in just a couple minutes as that is taking place tonight. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. Coming up next, like I said, we'll get into a little Cotton Bowl discussion right here on Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making Locked On SEC your first listen every day. I want to give you guys a message from our sponsor, Intuit TurboTax. If you're tired of the endless waiting, wondering, and worrying about your taxes, nada is the thing of the past. You see, taxes don't need to be complicated or stressful. TurboTax is here to change the game by matching you with a TurboTax expert who can get to work on your return right away. No more waiting for answers. No more wondering if you're missing out on deductions. Whether you got one form or 20, TurboTax experts give your taxes their undivided attention while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on what really matters. You won't have to lift a finger, but you'll get the peace of mind knowing that your taxes are being handled by the pros. If you're ready for stress-free taxes and the most money back guaranteed, head over to TurboTax.com today and get matched with your expert who is ready to take on your taxes so you could focus on your day. It's only available with TurboTax Live full service, real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. That's TurboTax.com/guarantees. All right, rolling along here, Locked On SEC, and we'll be in Dallas tonight for the Cotton Bowl between Texas and Ohio State. Texas is the last chance for the SEC to punch their ticket to the national championship game to take on Notre Dame. Congrats to Marcus Freeman and the Irish. They have punched their ticket, and they beat Penn State. They are heading to the national championship game. But as we look ahead to this game, man, it is going to be very interesting to see what Steve Sarkisian and company can do. Is Steve Sarkisian's turn to take Texas back to the national stage. That, remember, they lost in this spot a year ago to Washington as Quinn Ewers did not play a great first half. Got better as the game went along, but it was too little too late there in those final minutes of the game. But hoping to get the Longhorns back to a place they have not been since 2009, where Mac Brown and Colt McCoy got there. Of course, they lost that game. They have not been victorious since Vince Young in 2005. And I used to joke, the Longhorn Network, it felt like they would always replay that national championship from 2005. And look, as fun and legendary as the game as it was with Vince Young, it was also a reminder to Texas fans, it has been that long since we have had glory. It has been that long since we have had that, that national championship, glory of holding up that trophy. Like, let's get back there. Steve Sarkisian making it a point this week to acknowledge that his team is the underdog, saying, look, a lot of times in this format is not always about who was the best team for 12 games. It's about who's playing the best football this time of year. And I think we can all agree what Coach Ryan Day and Ohio State have done, what they've done coming out of that Michigan game, what they've been able to do since the playoffs have started has been tremendous. It's a credit to Coach Day and his staff in re-galvanizing that roster and getting them going. Yet here's Sarkisian making everyone know which side of the fence to call the disappointment on if they lose Friday night. He said, I could probably poll everybody in this room talking with the media, and you'd all probably agree that they are favored to win the game. And that's okay. That's football. That's sports. That's why we have to do what we have to do. I'm not going to back off what I said. The reality is the reality. And yes, he's right. The Longhorns are the underdog. They've been sitting at about a 6-point underdog all week. They entered the year considered probably one of the four most talented teams. I think most people kind of expected they would, play for an SEC title as the media picked and would be in this playoff. He said, look, we didn't get blown out by Georgia. And they did have the easiest path, through the SEC in terms of scheduling. But I think it's worth noting, look, the Longhorns have not played a fully complete game yet. It was looking like that way against Arizona State last week when they were up 24-8 going to the fourth quarter. But then they opened the door for Arizona State, let them come back, tie it, and had to go to overtime, and then needed a fourth down miracle in overtime to keep the game going. Again, they made the plays. But I think that's why people are looking at them as an underdog. Ohio State has played 2 very complete games in the playoffs so far. Sark said, we got to go perform. That's our responsibility as a football team, is to go perform. But they have earned that right because of the way they have played here the last couple of weeks. Jeff Clark over at Outkick, he seems to think that Texas is going to get thrashed in this one. He put up his prediction, basically broke it down. He says, if Thursday the Buckeyes are 6-point favorites, after pummeling Oregon, I'm expecting Ohio State to be the public betting favorite by kickoff. Already made peace with the likelihood. Sports books, they are rooting for the Longhorns in the Cotton Bowl. Texas's best win was over Clemson. Longhorns lost twice to the Georgia Bulldogs. Might have been Kirby's weakest team he's had in recent years. The Longhorns aren't even playing their best quarterback. Again, this is Jeff Clark. He says Arch Manning has a better completion rate, touchdown rate, yards per pass, so on and so forth. He said, furthermore, Texas makes too many mistakes, and Ohio State has had terrible luck with officiating, which has to change eventually. Longhorns are 88th in penalties per game, 86th in turnovers per game. The Buckeyes are 19th in turnovers per game, 7th in penalties per game. He said, we've seen cracks in Texas's pass defense in the college football playoff. Texas gave up 336 passing yards to Clemson, almost 300 yards passing to Arizona State. And Ohio State quarterback Will Howard, he threw for 311 against Tennessee and 319 against Oregon. Look at those Buckeyes receivers, Emeka Ibuka, Jeremiah Smith, future first-round picks. He does go on to say his biggest concern about betting on Ohio State is the head coach Ryan Day, who has not gotten the most out of his talent in recent seasons. But he did go on to say Texas's Steve Sarkisian doesn't get enough guff for never winning the big game. Hence, the coaching matchup is a wash, and he thinks Ohio State's talent will reign supreme. Now, his prediction is Ohio State 34, Texas 21. That caught my eye because I said, wait a minute, that would be the most points that Texas has given up all year. The most points Texas's defense has allowed all year was 31, and that was last week in double overtime against Arizona State. The most points they give up in regulation, that was 30 in the home loss to Georgia back in October. So if Ohio State's going to score 34, again, it would have to be the worst performance of Texas's defense all year. So that would be the most points they've given up. One more quick note here on Texas. Cam Williams is expected to start at right tackle tonight. He expected to be available. According to a report from Pete Thamel, a 6'5" junior is expected to make his return to the field. He missed the quarterfinal game against Arizona State with a right knee sprain that he suffered in the win over Clemson. So that's big news. The good news is redshirt freshman Trevor Gooseby, who started in his place, did do a good job in blocking, but they didn't run the ball as effectively. So you get Cam Williams back there, right tackle. Maybe we see Trey Wisner in those backs for Texas moving the football a little bit more. But Williams had started right tackle in each of their previous 14 games, and run game was very good. Texas also looking to see if Isaiah Bond will be closer to 100%. Suffered that ankle injury in the SEC title game, and according to some reports, he practiced with the first team offense all week and is expected to be a go. So we will see. But as for my prediction, look, I'm going to claim to be the SEC homer here. We're going to go with Texas. I think their defense has been so impressive. I think this will be the best defense that Ohio State has seen all year. We can talk all we want about Ohio State's weapons. Oh, my God, they finally started to utilize them. Great. But let me introduce you to Michael Taft and Andrew Makuba and all these different weapons that they have. Janae Barron. I mean, there are weapons on this Texas defense that I think can be the difference maker in slowing down the Ohio State offense. And so we'll see. Again, I just feel like this might be the Longhorns' time to shine. You know, their only 2 losses all year were to Georgia, who obviously is loaded with talent. But to me, you know, Anthony Hill's been so good at that linebacker spot for them all season. Man, it's just David Benda's been good. Colin Simmons, the freshman's been outstanding. And I think Bert Auburn gets a little retribution. I think Bert Auburn makes a big kick or two tonight, and Texas wins, and we get a Texas versus Notre Dame national championship. That's our prediction. We'll stick with it. Again, we're locked on SEC, so we're a little biased. Any Ohio State fan watching, apologies. Still more to come here on Locked On SEC, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, covering your team every day. When we return, we'll get to the latest transfer portal news going on around the conference. That's next. Hey, but first, I want to remind you guys about FanDuel. From big upsets to game-winning drives, the NFL playoffs, they're better with FanDuel right now. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. That is $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. The FanDuel app going to give you everything you need for live bets, same-game parlays, and so much more. You can go to FanDuel.com right now and get in on the action. Of course, you got this game tonight. If you feel good about Texas as the underdog, you can get them straight up. You could take them plus the points. However you want to do it, FanDuel has got it there for you. Again, Cotton Bowl action, and then all of the NFL playoff action happening this weekend. Yeah, latest line is Texas plus 5.5 still right there at FanDuel. So you want them on the money line, plus 195 on Texas. Let me just kind of plug this in here. $5 bet wins you close to $10. So close to 2-1 odds there on Texas in the straight up upset. So just visit FanDuel.com to join today. Get started with $200 in bonus bets. That is at FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, roll along here, Locked On SEC, and very quickly, we got to get to some of the other news and notes going on around in the transfer portal. We got so much going on here, so let's dive back into it. Let's go over to Ole Miss as they picked up a commitment from former West Virginia wide receiver Traylon Ray on Wednesday. He had a successful year last year, 28 catches, 426 yards, and 4 touchdowns. And he now joins a wide receiver room that's got some other new faces. You got Deuce Alexander from Wake Forest, Caleb Odom from Alabama, Dazon Stripling from Oklahoma State. So Lane Kiffin's saying, let's go get some portal guys, and we're going to rebuild this wide receiver room. It will be interesting to see how different that offense looks next year for Ole Miss. Obviously, Jackson Dart out of eligibility and moving on. Austin Simmons, the heir apparent there, the redshirt freshman, comes in next year and expected to be the guy. But so far, Ole Miss landed 17 transfer commitments. The other one they got, Trace Bruckler from New Mexico, tight end, who entered the portal, had 22 catches for 138 yards and 2 touchdowns last year. Posted on social media, the best is yet to come. Thank you, Jesus. Hashtag Hottie Toddy. Playing 39 games over 4 seasons at New Mexico. So Trace Bruckler, tight end, and wide receiver Traylon Ray. 2 names to keep an eye on there for offensively for Ole Miss next year. Over Georgia, some good news for them. Cash Jones going to come back for another season, announcing on Instagram Thursday that he will return. He's a Georgia running back that did the most of his damage as a pass catcher. Of course, with all the injuries that Georgia had to their running back room throughout the year, made the most of his opportunities. Finished the year with 24 catches for 274 yards and 4 touchdowns. Also rushed for 27 yards and a score. But much of his production came later in the year. Caught a touchdown pass against Notre Dame in the college football playoff game. He'll be entering next season with a new quarterback. And, of course, we will see where Carson Beck ends up. But Georgia already bringing in some offensive weapons through the portal. We know Noah Thomas from A&M coming to Georgia. USC transfer Zachariah Branch. So plenty of reason to get excited for Georgia's new additions. But Cash Jones is going to be back in the fold for the Bulldogs. Over in Tennessee, a couple of their guys heading out in the portal. We now know where they're heading. Christian Harrison, who started 10 games for Tennessee this season, now he's heading to Cincinnati. He's the son of former NFL DB Rodney Harrison. He'll have 2 seasons of eligibility remaining and 31 tackles this year, a sack and a pass deflection. And he was one of 2 DBs to enter the portal for Tennessee, joining Jordan Matthews, who committed to Vanderbilt. Vols lost 18 players to the transfer portal and have brought in a few others. Alabama wide receiver Amari Jefferson coming in, Arizona guard Wendell Moe. Also, tight end Holden Stays. He announced yesterday he is heading to Indiana to play for the Hoosiers. This will be his second stint in the state of Indiana as he began his collegiate career at Notre Dame before coming to the Vols this past year. He was a backup to Michael Mayer at Notre Dame. transferred to Tennessee with having a big role in the Vols offense this season, but or was hoping for it, but did not come to fruition. Caught just 15 passes for 131 yards and a touchdown. So Holden stays off to Indiana. Some other Tennessee news. Mike Keith, a Tennessee alumnus, has been announced as the new voice of the Vols. He is currently the voice of the Tennessee Titans, but a chance to return back to his alma mater and succeed the retiring Bob Kessling. Keith will call Vol football and basketball games starting in the fall. Kessling announced his retirement in November, and Tennessee putting out a statement saying, Danny White, AD, saying, look, when we discussed bringing in potential candidates, one name that was at the top of our list was bringing back Mike and his family to Rocky Top. Keith has been active since 1984, including coverage of the Vols in the late 90s. But since 1999, he's been the play-by-play voice for the Tennessee Titans. So, look, dream job for him. Congrats to Mike Keith. Wish him the best of luck there. Couple notes here real quick in closing. Paul Finebaum talking about a couple of different topics, and he was wondering if Alabama overlooked an obvious candidate when finding their Nick Saban successor. The SEC Network host was talking to AL.com and talked about, look, maybe they should have considered Lane Kiffin a little bit more. He said the name that keeps being brought up by people is Lane Kiffin. He said because Lane, even though he didn't make the playoffs either this year, he seems to get a lot out of his players. And it just feels like Kiffin never got a shot, never got a call. And I wonder, just asking this out loud, is that something that Alabama is going to regret? He said, I thought Kalen DeBoer was a good hire at the time. No longer in that camp. Well, I'm not sure where I am. So let's go back and think about who were the other options. It came down between DeBoer and reportedly Mike Norvell. I mean, nobody can cast their lot with Norvell after truly the most disastrous season I've ever seen a contender have. So interesting thought on, when it comes to, Lane Kiffin. Like, remember, people just thought, there were some people that thought, oh, he's just toxic. We can't even consider him. But I think, it's time you start taking Lane Kiffin a little bit more serious. He has been a fantastic coach there, has done a great job at Ole Miss. Did they come up short this year? Yeah, sure. But again, just I wonder what Lane could have done at Alabama. With that talent, Jalen Milroe this year, if Lane had switched allegiances over to Alabama, do you think he would have had Alabama in the playoff? I think there's a good chance. There's a good argument to be had there. And lastly, a note on Nick Saban. Shane Gillis was on with the College Game Day crew recently. That was ahead of the Indiana-Notre Dame game, and the two had a memorable back and forth that included Gillis making a jab at Nick Saban and his hat he was wearing, calling him Alabama Jones, and then the former Alabama coach taking issue with accusations of cheating from a joke that Shane Gillis made about SEC players being paid before NIL was legal. Gillis came away from game day feeling Saban was seriously upset with him. He recalled how Saban wasn't around for the original joke and may have taken the wrong approach at the desk after chatting with Kirk Herbstreit and Pat McAfee. Gillis discussed his game day appearance on the Matt and Shane Secret podcast. He said, after I said that, we had to go into the stadium and sit at the desk. He wasn't with us when I first said it the first time. So I got in there, and right before we go on, he looks at me and says, I heard what you said. I was like, holy bleep. And then Herbstreit and McAfee were like, he's just breaking balls, dude. He loves messing with you guys. He's just messing with you. I was like, all right, well, I'll mess with him back. He said, I would have never done with that if I thought he was so serious. He said, I went up to him after and was like, you think the SEC dominated because we cheated? That's BS. He spazzed out on me. After he yelled at me, I had to help him down, and he looked around to see if anybody else could help him, but I had to be the one to help him down, and I felt really bad about it. Saban did join McAfee's show after the game day thing and indicated that his daughter is the member of the family who finds Gillis funny. He said, I understand he's a comedian. Obviously, he was just more intimidated by J.J. Watt than he was by me. He was trying to be funny, which I get it. My daughter loves him, so that kind of soothes the soul a little bit that someone in our family likes the guy. But it's safe to say that Nick Saban and Shane Gillis not going to be hanging out anytime soon as besties. All right, that is going to do it for this edition of Locked On SEC. Thank you guys for making us your first listen every day. Again, we'll have some updates and some content coming to you from the Cotton Bowl in Dallas, and let's see if Texas can win. Again, rest of the SEC, if you're rooting for Texas, or not, whatever. But look, they are the SEC's lone chance at a national championship still. And we'll have full coverage for you. All right. Thank you guys for making us your first listen. Now you can make your second listen. You check out Locked On College Football with Spencer McLaughlin if you care for that. Go check it out. That's going to do it for us. I'll talk to you guys on Monday right here on Locked On SEC.